Floating enemies are the second special trait introduced in the game. The first floating enemy you will encounter is Moof, in the 38th stage of the Empire of Cats, Brazil. Now, unless you've been living under a rock, you would know that enemies with a trait can be countered by specific cats and abilities. Take Bishop Cat as an example, an early unit you can get with a counter ability against the trait. Bishop Cat has the ability to slow floating enemies for 4 seconds, which sets their movement speed to 1. With the Into the Future Skyfruit treasures, this duration increases by 20%. But before we start, it is important to mention that this is the second episode in an 11-part series, which will eventually cover every trait in the game. If you like this guide, make sure to subscribe to see the next one about alien enemies. Anyway, so how do you best counter floating enemies and see no trouble clearing stages such as these? Well, I'm glad you asked. Floating is more of a support trait. What I mean by that is there are plenty of enemies with floating and another trait. Take Calamari for example, a dangerous alien/floating backliner that can deal good damage and weaken your lineup with her ability. Due to the dual traits, you can counter her with anti-floating cats like Octopus Cat that can tank her attacks with its resist ability, and anti-alien units like Catalite who acts as a good mid shield against aliens. You can also bring in cats immune to a weakened ability, such as Cyber Cat. Moof, another warm-up enemy. Except this one is arguably more useless than BB Bunny is, since he is what we call a money slave. Enemies like Moof are typically put in stages to make them easier, not harder, since they drop so much money allowing for the tempo of the stage to be set. There are stages like most zombie stages, for example, where a large chunk of the difficulty comes from the scarcity of cash. Spamming moves can make the stage basically irrelevant, due to how much money every single one of those drops. In Primitive Souls, you can especially see this, as the free moves right at the start give you the cash required to beat the initial Dogumaru. Let's now talk about one of the most iconic enemies in the game, Bun Bun. The Bun Bun family is an example of an enemy family, with every single variant carrying the floating variant, except Relic Bun Bun, but we'll get to him later, much later. Because of that, these enemies can be countered by units like Shaman Cat's true form, Sanzo Cat, and Mer Cat's true form, the iconic Cameraman Cat. Sanzo is by far the best CC unit against floating enemies, due to his very consistent slow against floating, while Cameraman Cat is very spammable, has plenty of survivability, and deals lots of damage against the trait. Cyclones. Another pretty dominant floating enemy family I'd like to mention is the Cyclones. These are, at least on paper, very powerful bosses that have some solid cats behind their debut stages, but unfortunately for them, they mostly just end up being weaker Bun Buns due to their sluggish speed and pretty low range. This allows the two previously mentioned options of Cameraman and Sanzo to basically have zero challenge against them. At least, not all Cyclones are floating, which kinda negates the issue. But the white, red, black, cosmic, and perfect Cyclone fall into power creep madness. Well, if you have made it this far, make sure to like this video and subscribe, because this is only the beginning of Mr. Cat. We're here to stay pumping content for you and rebuilding our great Black Cat's empire. And thank you so much for the support on the last video. Well, let's continue. One of the more interesting floating enemies is Rollo. This is quite a gimmicky enemy that has insane amounts of DPS and lots of knockbacks, as well as plenty of backswing, meaning once you knockback it, it will attack back instantly. This unit counts in groups and requires lots of mid-shielding, but it is important to mention nuclear units like Fishman Cat, with his massive damage versus floating, can easily one-shot a Rollo. Swimmer is even usable before true forming. Loki. Loki is low-key, oh my god, a pretty annoying enemy with his impeccable 500 range and more than 600% uptime on his curse. He can be a menace as a floating enemy, though mostly as support since that 4k DPS can move a rock. This is a floating enemy that is a bit harder to take down by power creep, because he usually stays so far away from the rest of the battlefield that you don't really have any quick options to take him down. Props to you, PONOS, for actually designing an enemy well. Once you deal with his support though, it's over for this dude, so he's very stage dependent. Let's look at Dried Fish Market as an example, where he's accompanied by lots of small peons, and the stage is designed around being able to survive them for long enough so you can kill Loki. Mini White Cyclone is, well, a mini White Cyclone. With the 200% magnification he always appears at, he has 880k health and 40k damage per hit, but with 240k DPS, but still falls into the same problem as his brother, which is having a pitiful 100 range, making him susceptible to Sanzo and Ramen Cat. With this being said, he's a more dangerous enemy due to him actually having use cases in late game ZL. He has only one knockback, making him a very bulky peon, and in Neutrino Snowlands he truly shines, where he's accompanied by goddamn Hanya in an attempt to throw you off. You have to kill 3 of them in total, while he's breathing down your neck, making for quite a challenging stage. Gobble has a very unique ability, Poison, which deals a percent of the unit's max HP, and therefore it's best to not try and tank it, but rush it down with units like Awakened Bahamut Cat and the previously mentioned Swimmer Cat. But you should now have true form for the increased range, stats, and movement speed. Patrol Hazuku will be our second to last guess for an enemy that could have been so powerful, but PONOS fumbled in his stages and made him super easy to kill. He only has one difficult stage. He has 1.85 million health, 36k damage per hit, and 480 standing range, paired with an incredible long distance attack of 350 to 1060 range. He also has a 20% chance to create a level 1 surge attack between 400 and 1200 range, making for another RNG annoyance. With this range, he can snipe all of your damage dealing backliners super easily, but PONOS put him in a bunch of stages where it takes too long to spawn, allowing you to easily abuse his huge blind spot and rush him down with all of your anti-floating cats. The true exception to this is Birth of True Men, where Luza covers his blind spot very well and allows them to synergize very well together. Professor Old Broly is our final enemy for this video, and well, this guy is truly a beast. Until you remember he's a floating enemy. For some reason, he only has 200k health, which is his biggest weakness. As you'll see, he deals 42k damage per hit, has 360 range with an Omni Strike, making him reach up to 440 range, freezes cats for 4 seconds and attacks every 4.77 seconds, making him sound super scary on paper, but all he takes to beat is just a little bit of skill. As you can see here, if you can time a Fishman or a Can correctly, you can easily take it down in just 3 hits, further invalidating him. Good to see him being spammed in stages though, requiring to pull a tricky maneuver a couple of times per stage. All he needs is just a little boost in health, like a 400 or 200% magnification, and he could truly be a beast.